Hey everyone, Jim Coventry from Rotowire here with the Week 10 must-start fantasy football players. We look at trends every week. Look, if you're not looking at the trends week after week and watching especially a recent 3-week trend on players, a lot of times you're missing advantages over the field, be that in season-long deeper leagues where there aren't always obvious lineup choices, and certainly in DFS, you have to always be on top of your game to get an edge. Some of these players are going to be obvious, but we point out the trends. Some players might surprise you a small bit because, again, these recent trends are often sticky. So let's start with Travis Etienne, an obvious one. Everybody knows we're playing Travis Etienne. He has at least 109 yards and a touchdown in 3 straight games. But the one thing that we've noticed is he has very quickly become the complete centerpiece of the offense, not Trevor Lawrence. He has 52 rushing attempts over the last 2 weeks. And I think a lot of people felt when he was coming into the league that he would be primarily a receiver who can run as a running back. But I don't think anybody thought we'd be seeing 28 carries in a game with 24 the prior week. Now, he has enough of a build. We think that he may be able to hold up under that workload, but it is a very significant workload he's had. Now, fortunately, he came out well. He did go to the sideline. It looks like he had injured his knee, but he was right back in the following series. Yes, we love when players do not get hurt. We want them all healthy all the time. These guys do a great job out there, and they definitely give us a lot to root for. But anyway, the receiving game, that hasn't been there, but that's fine. Fantasy managers are taking the points, but he only has 50 receiving yards and 7 catches over the last 4 weeks. So again, it's basically rushing production, but it's been there. So keep going, Travis Etienne. Definitely is the salary is not out of control in DFS either. Mecole Hardman. Now look, when he scored those 3 touchdowns, color me skeptical. It was one of those games you're not going to see those, and he had those 3 touchdowns on 6 touches. So that was fluky as they come, game plan specific. But then he comes out against the Tennessee Titans in a game that it was a real struggle for the Chiefs against the physicality of that defense. He had 9 targets in that game, resulting in 79 yards and a touchdown. Now, here's the caveat. There were 100 offensive plays for the Chiefs, so everybody had targets. But I still think it's a positive trend for Mecole Hardman. The fact that he was more involved than he had been, that he does have production in 2 straight games. So I think if you're in a 12-team league and you are looking at whether you're flexing Hardman, I think you flex him. He's not a wide receiver 3. He doesn't have the consistent volume to do that. Bye weeks and injuries, maybe. Tracy, I'll get that question at the end. Just remind, if I don't see it, make sure you put it back up there. Anybody else with questions, I will always get those at the end. The next player, Joshua Palmer. Look, Palmer's going to be around a while. Mike Williams is going to be out for a while with an ankle. Keenan Allen, who knows when we're going to see him again. But in the last 2 games, 22 targets. He's caught 16 of them, which is a very good catch rate, 163 yards. And the whole point is, we know Justin Herbert has to throw the ball, right? And he needs someone to throw the ball to. And right now, Joshua Palmer has been reliable. So he is likely going to see consistent work. And, they're playing San Francisco this week. Terrible matchup, but Herbert will stand in the pocket despite pass rush, and I think Joshua Palmer comes up productive again. Maybe more of a floor game, but I think we have another good opportunity. Now, the TJ Hawkinson debut was interesting, and the box score dwellers will see that, or observers will say, oh, of course, 9 targets, he catches them all for 70 yards. It's beautiful. But here's what I want to point out. KJ Osborne played his 80% snaps. They're playing 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, and a tight end. He only had 2 targets. And Osborne had been seeing more work than that. I think TJ Hawkinson came in, and he didn't just take on Irv Smith's role. I believe he relegated KJ Osborne. I believe that TJ Hawkinson is their de facto number 3 receiver. And with the targets he saw, look, this offense is very sporadic. If they start out based on their scripted play calls, it's usually pretty good. And then they really don't have much of a clue after that. So I'm concerned about their coaching based on late game stuff. But I still think there's going to be enough weeks in the tight end position. Good luck with that, right? But I think right now, Hockenson is, the tight end 6 or so that you drafted him to be. I still don't think he is Dallas Goedert, but he's right behind Goddard. I mean, you could make a case right now for making him the tight end 4 or 5, because who knows when we're seeing Darren Waller and a number of other players. And Zach Ertz is, he's already seen a little downtick in his targets. So just something to consider there. All right, next one we'll look at here. Justin Fields. I know, got to bring him up again, right? But look, I'm doing my end of season rankings, and it's gross at quarterback. Kyler Murray hasn't been very good. He's put up some fantasy points, but he's not breaking the bank. And good luck with Lamar Jackson. He's middling. He's getting his 40, 50 rushing yards. I know last night he had, upwards of 69 or something, or maybe even 80. I think he had 80 last night, but he hasn't been doing that. He's throwing one or fewer touchdowns in a game. Lamar hasn't run for a touchdown since week 2. Those 100-yard games dried up in week 3. So honestly, if you're putting Justin Fields, if he's going to keep running the ball, yeah, he's probably quarterback 4 right now. Mahomes is at the top. And we'll see what Josh Allen's elbow looks like. But outside of those two, do you trust anybody right now? Am I leaving anybody out? Probably not. Joe Burrow, I love Joe Burrow, but it's not working there. So it's been horrible at quarterback. So right now, and I dropped Justin Fields in the Kings Classic after week 3 because the coaching was so awful. But hey, I couldn't get him back, unfortunately. But man, right now, strong QB1. You might have a bad game or two in there, but all these quarterbacks are laying an egg now and again, except for Allen and Mahomes. All right, next one. So Garrett Wilson, he's back. Zach Wilson's horrible, but he's smart in one way. He's getting the ball to Garrett Wilson. In the last 2 games, he's got at least 92 yards in each of them. And in the last game, he puts up the 92 yards, and no other pass catcher had more than 16 yards on the team. And, 24 targets, he had 9 of them. So 37.5% target share. So, Garrett Wilson's a superstar, and he's got a bad quarterback. But guess what? He looks like he's in good shape because he's going to get the football. And then, of course, Kenneth Walker, and this is an obvious one, the no-duh one, but he's getting a lot of work. And, he has 7 touchdowns already in last 5 games. He took the starting job over a few weeks ago. He had a, in-game replacement a while back, but 3 times over 100 yards. Seattle's defense, in week 3 or so, they played the Lions. And I made it a point after that game. There were 92 points in that game. And I'm like, oh, my God, here's the lesson. You start your players against the Seahawks. Start your players against the Lions. Wow, the Seahawks changed literally overnight. Their corners have galvanized. The coaching of the front 7, the way they're just manipulating players, often lining up fronts with simulated pressures, making things tough on opposing quarterbacks. The Seahawks may not be an elite defense. They went from being horrible to very good. The young guys are panning out. That's what it is. Etienne Nwosu's getting some good pass rush. Last week they were without Darrell Taylor, and they still got it done. He's a good pass rusher. But right now, Seahawks are a good team. And so, so we're going to have games where Kenneth Walker's going to be getting plenty of work. He's a little more boom or bust as a runner. He needs the big plays, but he gets them. He's an excellent running back. So, again, you don't need me to sell you on Kenneth Walker if he's in your season-long league. But in DFS, yeah, he's definitely a player you consider. And then Cordarrelle Patterson. Wow, it's good to see him get back. And he only had 1 target, which we don't like that. And he had 13 rushing attempts. Okay, we'll take that. But, basically, he was playing a rotational role like he had been before the injury. Week 1, they overplayed him. They played him a ton of snaps. He's always going to break down to that. But he is so good right now. And the blocking for the Falcons is exceptional. So we love that. So I have notes, Brandon. Yeah, I have notes. I write my own notes in my own article, so I always look back to my notes. So anyway, with Patterson, we love the fact that he, on limited work, gets done. They have great blocking scheme in Atlanta. It's not just the 5 linemen. It's 2 and 3 tight ends, extra running back in. They're getting great run blocking. So we love that. So anyway, we get to the point of Cordarrelle Patterson. Right now, as long as they limit his workload, he should potentially have a better chance of staying fresh the rest of the way. And he could eventually get targets in the pass game. And ultimately, the Falcons keep games lower scoring by running the ball a lot, so they don't get in a lot of shootouts. And we've seen the games they fall behind, they don't throw. But maybe now, when they weren't throwing, it's possible we see Patterson more as a receiver. So excellent play in DFS again. Patterson's salary stays low. If you think there's a game where they're going to get, a lot of points scored against them, it might be the way to get Patterson involved with things. All right, before I get to questions, if you're watching on YouTube, which many of you are, please smash the like and subscribe buttons. If you like our content, I'll get you 2 days free at Rotowire. Go to rotowire.com/try. No credit card needed. Surprisingly, I don't have any questions on YouTube and Twitter is where I get most of them from. I do some Insta questions, though. So let me scroll back and see what we got here. We have Tracy wants to know Njoku and Keenan Allen. I don't know if Keenan Allen's coming back anytime soon. He played limited in week 7. And then after that, he had the aggravation of the hamstring injury. And often, not always, but often those are as bad or worse than the original injury. And the fact is, he's in that 30 range, the window of age. And players don't heal at the same rate when they get there. And I know it sounds stupid, but it's kind of a reality why a lot of players fall off. It's recovery from injury. Now, Njoku, he wants to play this week. I'm nervous about that. Njoku is having a great season. And we saw with Jonathan Taylor. You hurry back from a high ankle sprain, and your season could be in real jeopardy in terms of upside potential. You've got to take your time recovering. There's no such thing as a mild high ankle sprain. They'll call it that all they want. Sometimes a quarterback can get away with it because a quarterback may not be, running around. He might be in the pocket. If it's a pocket quarterback, you can live on a high ankle sprain to kind of play a bit. And it depends which ankle. You have a drive ankle, and that drive ankle, you probably don't want it on that one. So I'm skeptical right now with the way tight end is. Yeah, you keep Njoku and you hope, because again, outside of the top 5 tight ends, what do you have? You don't have a whole lot at that point. So now we put Njoku back in. I probably start him in week 1 if I have another option, like just next week. If he plays, I probably start him in his first week back. Give him a chance. But if you have another option, I would wait it out a week. And I'm hopeful he's fully healthy when, I'll say, the other quarterback, I hate to say his name because a guy just, disgusts me. But when he comes back in, that offense is going to be potentially crazy if he doesn't have a lot of rust on him and they can throw the ball. All right, what other questions do we have? And I see a couple questions coming up on YouTube. Brandon, stash Wan'Dale Robinson. Peoples-Jones is the one to go with. Peoples-Jones has at least 70 yards in 4 of his last 5 games. And he also has a 50-yard game in there, which is his low point. Now, will he have that every week? Probably not. But he has been 5 weeks of consistent, strong play. And as I just mentioned a moment ago for Tracy's question, the other guy is going to be in a quarterback in a few weeks, and that's going to raise the ceiling of this offense. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a really, really, really good receiver. So, yes, I stash him over Wan'Dale. And ultimately, Wan'Dale showed the flash in the first week. They gave him targets. They kind of went away from him the game after that. I don't think he consistently gets the ball enough, but Jonathan Peoples-Jones has already kind of shown us in a 5-week sample the dude can play. All right, let's see what else we got here. Devontae Smith or Deontay. So, I am still, being it's Tuesday, I'm still looking back for all the trends and studying up everything I can learn from the prior week. And so I am not in a position to answer your week 10 question yet, but I will be able to answer that if you Wednesday, it's Wednesday. And then after that for sure, always. But yeah, I will start looking forward to Wednesday. So, off the cuff, Deontay Johnson has been struggling. I don't even know at this point, I couldn't tell you the opponents are, because again, I'm still looking back at everything. But I would say Deontay Johnson struggles. Now, Devontae Smith, I think, has 25 or fewer yards in 2 of the last 3 games, but he is more likely to have a high target game out of nowhere, where Deontay Johnson right now with Kenny Pickett, I don't think he has a ceiling. So I think, but again, revisit that question after I go into the weekly notes. Let me go back to some Twitter and YouTube. Then I'll come back to Insta. All right, we have Vorador. Oh, listening at work, guys. I'm glad you're listening. If you want to, let me know what draft picks, Mahomes. So, you know what? And that's a tough question, because the first thing is that it depends what level of players you have in the league, how other managers value the quarterbacks. In a 1 quarterback league dynasty, I mean, he's still young enough, right? We're still hoping to get another 8+ years out of Mahomes. And so I think there's that, and the fact he's established. But again, that's always a real tough question. What I always say is look at other people's rosters and see who needs the player, and then find a deal that works for both of you and put it out. But it's very hard to answer that question in a vacuum. Do I think Judy for Hockenson is fair? And do I think Hockenson for Khalil? All right. So Jerry Judy has come off of 3 good games in a row. And I don't know coming out of the bye what this offense is going to look like. Cortland Sutton had a couple of tough matchups, and they were very smart, the Broncos were, to kind of go Judy's way, especially the game when Sutton saw a lot of Sauce Gardner. That was not easy for him. So I do think Judy had 3 good games, but I think we're going to see a lot of ebb and flow. Hockenson, being a tight end, and I still think, obviously, that, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen had as many targets roughly within 1 or 2 as Hockenson. So I think Hockenson, though, may have a good floor here. Now, Minnesota is a good run defense, and they have an easier opponent. They may not have to throw as much. So I think Hockenson, though, is a bit more valuable for Judy right now. If you're talking redraft, for sure, I would put Hockenson ahead of Judy for the positional scarcity. If you're talking dynasty still, Judy showed enough in these last few weeks to make me think that he does have a strong future in the game. Hockenson, I think, has a limited ceiling overall. I think he's shown ability to be good. We had the Seattle game, but Seattle was horrible against tight ends. And so ultimately, I think your bigger upside longer term for dynasty would be Jerry Jeudy. And then Hockenson for Khalil Herbert. We never know what we're getting these running backs, right? They look good when they're in a rotational role. The change of pace thing works so well for so many running backs, and then sometimes they get into the actual position. I think the Bears continue to limit Herbert snaps. He had 1 game in the last 4 where he was over like 28% snap share. So ultimately, I think they see that they don't want to give him heavy volume. So that makes me nervous about him longer term. If that's what the coaching says, maybe they're wrong. It's possible. But that sometimes tells me this is a rotational back, very talented rotational back. But ultimately, then Hockenson with the tight end scarcity. So I would it's not lopsided. The deal is not lopsided in any way. But I would, because if somebody craves a running back, and if the person who will be acquiring Herbert believes that he could go into a big role, that's a thought that's out there. And so you capitalize on that. That would be my thought there. Any other Insta questions? Let's see. All right, Randy. All right, man. Let's see. We got 10-team league. Hurts at quarterback. So worth picking up Fields. Well, honestly, so I think Justin Fields right now, rest of season rankings, I have him quarterback 4 or 5. I can't remember which one exactly it was. 4 or 5. He's running. They're allowing him to do things and not just stand back and take a beating from the defense. So a mobile quarterback is priceless. I was saying earlier in the show, Lamar Jackson hasn't done anything of note since week 3. And what we're getting with Kyler Murray, not much. Had 1 good game 2 weeks ago. Other than the top 2, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert hasn't been great for fantasy, and Burrow hasn't. So, why? Oh, you said Hurts? Yeah, no. You still take Fields, though. You still take him. Because even if you got Hurts, you take him. Because if there's an injury, you're covered. And somebody else doesn't get Fields. Somebody who may get Fields and win the league. All right, let's see what else we got here. We got C-Ball. 49ers with Chiefs defense. The rest of the season, I'm going to say the 49ers. They're going to get healthier at some point. They've lost a couple people on IR permanently. But I still think the guys who were nicked up coming out of the bye, they're going to be fresher. This is a team that gets after it. And they're going to play with more leads because of McCaffrey. And if they play with leads, and they're so well coached on defense. So the 49ers are the way to go because they are just a better defense, and they should have good game script as well. Definitely think that. See if we have any other questions here. And then Randy, what else? Randy, teaching them the lay of the land. People, I'm not during the show. I got to do the show first. Questions come at the end. Brandon, you're awesome, man. I'm glad you're here, dude. Glad you're here. And when you think I'm reading before you, I have notes, but I also have talked to the camera for YouTube and Twitter. My camera's a little bit lower, so I got to talk to both cameras. A little bit difficult. Try to get everybody some help, though. Alex, let's see. You have Josh Allen and Diggs. Someone offered you Hurts, A.J. Brown, and Josh Jacobs. So, Josh Allen right now, we don't know what his elbow is going to shake out like. That diagnosis probably comes down the pike tomorrow. That's at least how I heard it most lately. And then you got Hurts, A.J. Brown, Josh Jacobs. If you need a running back, Josh Allen has at least 23.8 fantasy points per game. Jalen Hurts has a lot of games where they run the ball and he doesn't throw. AJ, you know what? I'm going to say the Allen and Diggs side because you got a floor. Whereas Jacobs has had 3 great games, then he's had 3 good games, but A.J. Brown's had too much ups and downs with not enough ceiling. I'm going to say the Allen and Diggs side. I'm going to say that side's the way to go because just their floor is so darn high. See if I have any other questions here. Brandon, all right, thanks, man. And then Randy. How do I Mooney? So you know, Randy, I love Mooney coming into the season. He wins every type of route on the field, short, intermediate, deep. He's an excellent receiver. Having Claypool helps him. Now, Claypool only played a small percentage of snaps last week, but he saw a lot of work with those. But having a bigger body guy for defense at least to pay attention to, that certainly helps him. But the fact that the Bears are now getting Justin Fields out of the pocket, they're weaponizing him. Mooney has time to make these. They had a really nice downfield pass that didn't connect the other day, but it was a really good read by Fields, and Mooney runs those routes so well, but he was connecting elsewhere. So Mooney right now is a high floor guy. But don't be surprised if we start seeing some ceiling games as defenses start worrying more about Justin Fields, realizing the Bears aren't turning back from their beginning of the season poor play calling. All right, C-Ball. Thoughts on OBJ? So, look, I think the deal with OBJ is going to be this. I think he is in peak form if he'll get there for the NFL playoffs. I don't think for fantasy he's going to be much of a factor. He tore that ACL in February, right? So the deal is he is going to be in the recovery mode still. And I think when I had read some a few weeks ago, I think he was like ticketing mid-December for his return. Fantasy playoffs are kind of right at the cusp of the end right there. So and I think when he comes in, I don't think it's full snap share. I think he plays 20 snaps, 30 snaps, and the goal is he signs with a playoff team, wild card round, or if the team is a bye, then he's full go in the playoffs. So you can add him if you really have a spot and nothing to go with. I just don't think he's a factor during the fantasy season. And Randy, of course, you're welcome. Glad you're here, man. Mario, should you trade Swift, Waddle, and Goddard for Kupp and Walker? Yes. Waddle has a lot of games where he only gets 5-6 targets, and he's made them work. That's not always going to work. And love Goddard, but he has a few, in that offense, that big game he had last week, and I've got Goddard on a lot of my teams, but I understand. Now, here's the deal. If you need a tight end and you don't have one, that makes that deal tougher. But I'd love to get rid of Swift because after that 16% of the snaps last week, oh my gosh, ouch, that hurt. So Kupp and Walker would be a great, great pickup as long as you don't hurt yourself too badly at tight end. But even then, the upside that Kupp and Walker give you may well be worth it, even if you had to stream a tight end. Cole Kmet. I just said it, yes. And I know he had 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, but that offense is coming along. Cameron, flexing Ayuk versus again, I'm still Tuesday, so I'm looking backwards to try to study everything. But right now, I would say Ayuk is going to be a strong. He's had 81 to 83 yards in his last 3 games. Very, very solid performance of him. And look, defenses can't focus on him. They got Christian McCaffrey, right? So he's going to get some targets. And he's not going to need a whole lot. And I think Debo may not be 100% from the hamstring. We'll find out later in the week. But Kareem Hunt right now, Miami's a tough run defense. That's the one thing they can do still. They can't stop the pass, but they can stop the run. So for me, it would kind of be fairly strongly 80 to 20 on Ayuk. Paul, how much have you been on Jeff Wilson? So here's your point. It depends on how much you need him, right? If you need him as a starter, bid it all. If you need him in your starting lineup as your RB2 or your flex, bid it all. And now here's how much you're going to get out of Wilson. I'll explain what you're going to get on him. And I made the bold call on the Sirius XM show on Sunday morning saying that Wilson would come right in to be the lead. He got 75 yards and a touchdown. I was a yard short. He did score a touchdown. It was combined rushing, receiving. Anyway, I expect him to get 55 to 60% of the workload. He was running 5.1 yards per carry with the 49ers. And believe this or not, Mostert was only going 4.5 yards per carry in Miami. He's not the explosive guy he was, but because Chase Edmonds couldn't run their system, they needed Mostert to get a lot of work. They can't work Mostert that hard. So Wilson should get you between 40 and 85 yards most weeks, and he probably gets you 3 or 4 touchdowns the rest of the way. That'd be my guess on him. So to base your bid on that, but I think ultimately, if you need him as a flex or an RB2, you bid it all. If he's a depth option for you, then I think you bid at least half of what you have left. That's what I would, at this point of the season, because at this point, how much football is left, right? We're in week 10 already. So that's how I would frame that. Gizmodo Games. You traded Fournette and Pittman for Ramondre and Gabe Davis. Yeah, that's a good trade because Fournette is trending down right now. And I was just reading something from one of the Tampa Bay Bucks beat writers that it looks like Rachaad White could be trending heavier toward the end of the season, and Fournette may be trending down a bit. And Pittman right now, look, Pittman's a great player in my opinion. But man, if Jeff Saturday's their head coach, that whole organization is in flux. And Sam Ehlinger at quarterback, not so hot. So yeah, Ramondre got 7+ targets in the last 3 games, each game. And Gabe Davis, I know it's hit or miss. There'll be some. Now, here's the one caveat. If we find out that Josh Allen's elbow is toast tomorrow, now you might make the trade today. I don't know. If his elbow is toast, then Gabe Davis is toast because the backup quarterback isn't probably going to be getting Gabe Davis the ball downfield. So that would be the caveat on the deal. So I would wait till tomorrow to make sure what we hear on Josh Allen. But if Josh Allen's elbow is good, then I like the Ramondre and Gabe Davis side. Jeff Johnson, you want to know thoughts on Jeudy? Well, like I was saying earlier in the show, he is. Let me check my notes. I don't remember exactly how many yards it was. It was between 54 and 96 yards in his last 3 games. So it's very good yardage. Now, remember, Cortland Sutton had 2 tough matchups in there. So I think the offense kind of had to push to Jeudy a bit. And one game with Sauce Gardner was really messy for Cortland Sutton. So overall, I think Jerry Jeudy is going to have more floor than ceiling, but I think he'll still be a top 40 receiver. Remember, this offense is kind of broken right now. And Greg Dulcich is a thing. And like I said, Sutton isn't going to be held to 25 yards or less in the last, going forward like he did the last 3 weeks. So I think there's going to be a bit there. But I think a top 40 receiver is about right. I think he'll have a couple good weeks. He's a very good player, but there's not a lot to go around between Dulcich, Sutton, and Jeudy, although Jeudy got it done 3 weeks in a row. So I think you ride the crest right now. If you're looking to start him this week, I think you start him coming out of the bye for sure. But we got to keep an eye on how that offense looks coming out of there because I don't know if they made any system fixes. Nate Hackett hasn't been doing a good job coaching, but it's possible they made some tweaks to get some things moving. Christopher, how you doing with Waller? Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, right. These lingering injuries, can't do much about them, right? Very, very, very frustrating. If he gets healed up, yeah, he has value. But I know. It's like one of those things. He's a tight end. If you're in playoff contention and you're not going to be out of playoff contention, you hold him. Because if he's healthy for the fantasy playoffs, you use him. Now, I don't like his usage before the injury. We were only seeing 4 or 5 targets a game. But, there's a chance that the Raiders, I shouldn't say they're going to figure things out. I don't think they are. But they might. For the first half against the Jaguars, they figured it out a little bit. And then they kind of regressed. But it's possible they figure out. So I'd hold them if you're in playoff, a playoff spot and you're going to have one. But if you're on the fence of making the playoffs, you might need somebody more useful. So you might have to move them. Jacob, 10-man half PPR. Best. And I'm going to sign off on Insta. I don't see anybody else here. So have a great day, everyone. All right. Come back to Twitter, YouTube. All right. Jacob, 10-man half PPR. Best tight end rest of schedule. Freiermuth or Dulcich. So, man, that's a tough one, right? I think Dulcich had 2 fluky plays that made him look really, really good. There's a busted coverage where J.C. Jackson fell down and he had a long touchdown. And then against Jacksonville, they kind of left him alone again. He had a long play. That's a Dulcich is very good, and you know that. But Freiermuth, I had speculated on the XM show this past weekend, Channel 87 Rotowire show. I speculated that Freiermuth with Claypool gone is going to see an uptick in work because I believe the vacated targets. Chase Claypool is playing 80% slot. He's a big body in the middle of the field. Steven Sims is a very good receiver. He's a little dude. Well, I think that Kenny Pickett likes the big target in the middle of the field. To me, Freiermuth, as good as he's been, I think he sees an uptick in targets. I think Pat Freiermuth is an elite tight end. I put him as my tight end 5 or 6 the rest of the way. Again, I can't remember exactly which one it was. Dulcich is like 9 or 10. They're both good. I think Freiermuth has an excellent floor going forward. And Jazz, better stash, Hasty or Craig Reynolds? I think Hasty is a better stash because he's closer to the starting job. If we have 1 injury in Jacksonville, he's in. Craig Reynolds needs 2 injuries for that to happen. So that's what I always say with these backup running backs. The shorter your path to usefulness is, that's why we like you. Reynolds is probably a better performer, but Hasty's closer to relevance. And you got to drop one. So, yeah, it'd be Craig Reynolds. Oh, yeah, Jacob, thank you. Yeah, hit the like button if you could. I always appreciate you guys doing that. It helps me out a lot at Rotowire. All right, Jacob, what else you got? 10-man half PPR. You have Diggs and Kirk, but you have Sutton, Palmer, Wandale. So did you trade Sutton and Hunt to the Nick Chubb owner for Amari Cooper? If you can get Amari Cooper out of that deal, you would run to hit the yes button on that one because, look, I love Sutton. He's in a tough situation. I think he gets it figured out a little bit, but I don't know what ceiling is really there in a Russell Wilson offense. And Kareem Hunt, look, he played good right before the trade deadline, but he has not been a good running back this year. He's in the same offense with Nick Chubb, same offensive line. Actually, Hunt is having his worst season of the year out of his career, and Chubb is having his best. So to me, yeah, I think that's a great trade. You get Cooper, and when that, I'm going to say it again, the other quarterback comes in from his suspension in a few weeks, that's going to be even better for Amari Cooper. Jacob, what do you trade Najee for McLaurin? To get McLaurin, yes. Najee's not doing anything. And you know what? Oh my gosh, I have Najee so low on my running back rankings. And I can't justify moving him higher. Not getting many targets, not getting many yards, not getting touchdowns. And so, yes, if you can get McLaurin, I would absolutely do that. And then, Jeff, you have Geno and Kirk, Eckler, Saquon, Patterson, Foreman, St. Brown, Lazard, Marquise Brown, Judy Palmer, and Kelsey. So in terms of your receivers, yeah, I see what you're saying. So somebody's probably, and anyway, at your running back, you have good depth, but Patterson has got to stay healthy, right? And so if he doesn't, you're going to, Saquon and Eckler. Eckler's getting a lot of usage. I think you need 4 running backs for the stretch run. I think you need to keep 4. You can flex 1 probably, but I think you keep the 4. Because it's fragile in the playoffs, right? Marquise Brown's coming back, and I think that offense is going to take off when he's there. We already saw have an uptick with Hopkins there, so I think you're kind of good there. And Lazard's been playing. So you don't have elite wide receivers, but your team's not constructed that way, right? So your team is constructed to be running back dominant and tight end dominant. So I think you run with your model. I think you go with the model you set because they're doing it for you. And you went in building this roster with the plan. Get enough out of the receivers. And I think you do. Christopher, you're welcome. Jeff, 7-2. Yeah, so you see, when you're already playing in playoff mode right now, you're playing with an eye to the playoffs. You're not playing with an eye to compete for a playoff spot. Seeding, whatever. Seeding is great. It's great to get a bye if you get a bye. But if you have a player that might help you in the fantasy playoffs, that's a real paramount. And Freiermuth or Schultz, you know what? Schultz has a decent floor, but Freiermuth, I'm telling you, he has been amazing the last 3 or 4 games. And I was saying, I don't know if you were with me a few minutes ago, but I was pointing out that with Chase Claypool who's running 80% of his routes on the slot, I think there's more middle of the field. So for Freiermuth, Freiermuth could be an elite fantasy option down the road. I'm going to say easily Freiermuth here. And again, Jacob, thank you for telling people to hit the like button. Appreciate that. What's going on? Hey, all right. Time to draft. Well, that's a tough question. It depends on your roster construct, right? If you're in a 10-team league, maybe 8-team league for sure. If you're in a 12-team league, you probably need the depth. Hunt hasn't been very good, but, again, so as you just need a running back, and having a running back is huge. So, yeah, that's important to understand. Woo Pig, good luck. Good luck against the number 2 seed. And Jacob, my last question. I'm going to get out of here. Schultz or Dulcich? Schultz has a higher floor, but Dulcich has a higher ceiling. So the floor play sometimes nice, and because Schultz does have a good chemistry for just being open in the middle of the field and then knowing where Dak Prescott wants him to be. So it's a very high floor. He seems over the knee injury, but Dulcich, I think, could have more big games than Schultz. But having a steady tight end who's a good producer, I think there's a lot to be said for that. It's really close between them. Very close. If you have a personal preference, go with that. I think the floor guy, Schultz, again, I think Dulcich is a good enough floor, but remember, it was such a small sample. We had a couple broken plays too. So that's how we'll frame that. All right, everybody, thanks for hanging in. Have a great rest of your day, and